At Fitness Together, we know your health, time, and well-being are important, which is why we created live one-on-one virtual personal training. We develop a customized program individually tailored to fit your needs, no matter your fitness level. Your personal trainer will push you, motivate you, and make adjustments to your workout in real time to ensure you're safe and getting the maximum results, all in the comfort of your home.
In a V position here, chest high, nowhere to touch side. Side. Go ahead and lean back. Good. Making sure we keep our chest nice and tall.
No fancy equipment or a lot of space needed, just a computer, tablet, or phone, and your personal trainer will take care of the rest. So, what are you waiting for?
All right, and we're live. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
I wanted to welcome everybody that's viewing today. My name is Bob. I'm with Fitness Together. I've got Julie and Ashley with me. This is going to be today a continuation of the conversation we started a few weeks ago about nutrition. First and foremost, for anybody that's watching that knows me, right away you see something different. So I wanted to address that right off the top. It was time. But more importantly than that, this is actually going to be a little plug, a little shout out to my barbershop. We've all been having to kind of take care of ourselves and cut our own hair and things like that. And with barbershops not able to do beard trimming still over the next few weeks, I had to take matters into my own hands. But that's not to say anything about the Chop Shop in Milford. They're a great, great barbershop. And I wanted to give them a plug today because not only did they keep me looking good for the last couple of years, but, like ourselves, a small business that struggling to get back open and get things going again. So if you're in the area and you need a good trimming, good haircut, definitely go see my friends over at the Chop Shop and let's keep them going as well. So we'll put that aside. We're going to jump right into our conversation again. But again, welcome, guys. Is there anything? I've got a bunch of questions loaded up, and I wanted to remind people that are just joining us to put your comments in the chat section there. That's where we're going to be posting your comments and asking questions of our panel here. But that's the way that we'll not only know that you're there, but also that you can get your questions read live here on the air. I said that this week I wanted to talk a lot more about diets and different things that people might be trying out there. And maybe we'll start off there, Julie, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Ashley, you had brought up last time the idea of intermittent fasting. And I know that you've been trying some things there. And I know a lot of our clients, and Julie, I'm sure you face this quite often, they're trying a lot of different things, all right? Elimination diets and fasting and all these different things. But maybe we could start with intermittent fasting. And then if there's some other things that we want to address. But what can you tell us about intermittent fasting and does it work?
So first and foremost, I'm really not an expert at it. There are some people that are really, really on board and recommend it to a lot of people, and I'm not one of those people. I have had some people have success with it, and I've had other people not. And it goes back to what I said a lot 2 weeks ago, that we're all built very differently. But I can explain what it is and the premise behind it. So again, not being an expert, but the premise behind it is that when we eat, our pancreas releases insulin, and insulin breaks down the carbohydrates and to some extent helps digest the proteins that we eat and pull it into the cells. And when we eat all the time, our insulin is always kind of high because our pancreas is constantly releasing insulin. And intermittent fasting is saying, try to eat for fewer hours in the day and have a longer fast. Normally we all fast overnight when we're asleep. We want to have a longer fast for intermittent fasting. So a really common one that I see people doing is they eat for only 8 hours of the day. So if they start eating breakfast at 6 a.m., they're done eating by 2 p.m. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Catching my mouth this morning. Or if they start eating at 11 a.m., then they could eat until 7 p.m. and they don't eat for the remaining 16 hours of the day. And what some people find is that they lose weight doing that. Other people, as I said 2 weeks ago, one of my specialties is disordered eating. And when people have a poor relationship with food or their body, or they struggle with knowing when and what to eat, sometimes it makes things worse because
Right.
they're trying to cram all their eating into a small period of time, and it really messes with their hunger fullness cues. But for some people, they find great success with it and their insulin levels are lower. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. So some people find that they lose weight, and some people just feel good on it too. I think it all comes
Right.
down to how you feel.
Yeah. Now, Ashley, I mean, this is something that you've been kind of working with. How long have you been doing this? Is this something you've been on and off of, or?
So I started playing around with it in October, and I would start eating at 12 p.m. and eat until 8 p.m. And because I am really active, like I lift weights twice a week, I ride my horse 4 to 5 days a week, I walk the dog, 2, 3, 4 miles every day. I felt like I wasn't getting enough calories. Like I didn't have enough time to get all the food in that I needed in 8 hours. So I expanded to breakfast is 10 a.m. and last meal is 8 p.m. So I'm a little bit bigger window for how much time I have to eat. For me, that helps me. I like it because it helps me keep organized. And I was kind of intrigued about not weight loss, because I've been the same weight for most of my adult life. But I was interested in seeing if I could change my body composition. And I have a little bit, nothing like super dramatic, but I think that I've enjoyed it because I used to get really hangry. Like I was very unpleasant to be around if I was hungry. My family can attest to that, but I don't get that anymore. So I think in having a little bit more structure, a little bit more regulation, I definitely get hungry. Like if I'm running late on my 10 a.m., like I think yesterday I was working at my barn and we didn't really get breakfast until closer to 11. And I was hungry. Like I housed an omelet and some hash browns and it was delicious. I'm not super rigid about it. So some days I eat at 9:50 or at 11, and then I eat a little bit later or a little bit earlier. But I think that flexibility indicates to me that it's a healthy, for me, it's like a mentally healthy thing. I'm not like, I can only eat at this time. Like the fluidity is important. Like it's not super, super strict. If I know that I'm going to be, if I were to be going out with friends, which we're not doing right now, but if I were, we were going to be eating later, I might start breakfast a little bit later. But then I try and get right back on track the next day. Right.
Now, I would think, it sounds like this is a diet that's fairly sustainable in terms of, like I said, you've been on it since October. The rules are restrictive other than the time of eating. So it seems like, and Julie, you can probably attest to this, that people have a little bit more success maybe staying on the program. I have another question here I'm going to pop up where someone was asking about, can you lose more fat on a low carb diet? So, in my opinion, I would think that something like a low carb diet versus intermittent fasting is going to be a little bit more complicated because it's a extreme departure maybe from how people are eating, and therefore a lot more difficult to stick with.
Yeah, a lot of people combine the two though.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think so. Carbs. Sometimes people say carbs turn into fat. Cat broke into the office again. So that is really not the case. So we need carbs, protein, and fat in our diet. They're the 3 macronutrients. But again, some people, when they cut back on carbs, and that means increasing protein and fat because you're eating one or the other, some people do tend to have success with losing fat, not because carbs turn into fat, but carbs make our blood sugar go up, and then our pancreas releases insulin. And when our blood sugar goes up, then it comes back down. And when we eat a lot of carbs, what can happen is our blood sugar goes up and kind of crashes a little bit. And I find that some people are really carb sensitive in that way. And when we crash, a lot of times we get like the hungry horrors, or we feel like we're just hungry all day, or we can't fill up. And I was vegetarian for probably 15 years, and my weight was always higher, which at the time bothered me. Now, as you two know, I'm on more of a track of body acceptance. But anyway, it was, I was always hungry. I didn't understand people that were full. So sometimes I find when people eat fewer carbs and more proteins and fats, they may feel more satiated. And then some people combine that with the intermittent fasting, and they find just in general their insulin levels are a lot lower because of the two things combined.
Right. Are there other, I mean, I did say I want to talk about diets today. So what are some other popular diets? And maybe Ashley, you have an opinion about this. Are there other things that you've tried? What are some of the other types of diets that people are trying nowadays? I mean, there's the old school ones, Atkins and South Beach and things like that. I don't hear that much anymore. And in a sense, those are just low carb diets, but are there other things that people are trying?
Yeah. So the first, I'll jump in real quick, because the first time I'd heard about intermittent fasting, people were saying you just shorten the amount of time you eat and you eat whatever you want. And to me, that didn't really make sense, because I think that what people are doing with diets is, in general, they're initially just lowering the amount of calories and food they're taking in. And I think that's what the time thing is. It's like you're just eating less food potentially. So that's why you tend to lose weight. And I think, I'm trying to think of what my clients have done. I know like clean eating was a thing for a while, as people are trying to get away from more processed foods.
Well, and keto too. That's the one I wanted to address.
Yeah, keto is the big one. Yeah, right now people like keto. Yeah, I don't know about I'm trying to think what other clients have said, but Julie might have more insight than I do, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe that's the one to address is kind of keto versus some of what we talked about already.
I don't like keto for what I'll just say what keto is. So I talked about the 3 macronutrients: carbs, protein, and fat. And when we tally up our calories, the carbs, protein, and fat make up 100% of our calories that we consume. So if one of the macros is low, one of the other ones must be high. And with keto, it's a very high fat diet, and therefore, and protein's moderate and carbs are very, very, very low. And the premise of keto is that it puts you into a state of ketosis. And the premise of that is that you start burning the fats that you eat, and then your body fat, instead of burning the carbs and protein that you're eating. And I don't, just scientifically, and maybe this is old school of me, but I was always taught being in a state of ketosis was not a good thing.
That's what I've always kind of counseled people as well. And again,
right.
Short-term fix for sure. And that's, what I've told people, you've got some reason to do it, for the next couple of weeks. Great. But you don't want, it's not something that strikes me as something you want to be on too long.
Right. And it supposedly gives you very bad breath and other bad body odors. And it's just, to me, again, I just feel like diets are the cause of obesity in our country. I wish people would learn to read internal signals. And I actually like high fat diets, not keto, but and maybe it's just personally speaking, I think that when I eat more fat, I feel more full and more satiated because fat takes longer to digest. When I eat a ton of carbs, I just feel hungry all the time. So for me, higher fat works. So that's a plus. Back in the 80s, everything was low fat and fat free, and obesity skyrocketed, right? So, but I think keto is just almost the same as the 80s. We're trying to latch on to something else.
Right. Yeah,
so I think that's one that I don't necessarily recommend.
Yeah, and so so many people are on it, and people, I mean, there's no denying kind of it works, right? That's why people latch onto it. But like you said, the long-term sustainability of it, and when you're kind of getting these kind of crashes afterwards, I think that any diet that turns around, is so restrictive that it causes you to kind of bounce the wrong way at the other end. I think is dangerous. I've got a comment here, and rather than post it because it's a little long, but I'll kind of read it. Heather says, she gets up 5 a.m. most days, has tea, something small, mostly carb-based, and then nothing until somewhere between 11 and 2, and notices that she feels a kind of a mid-morning crash. And is that a reaction from maybe being also dehydrated? If she tries to eat something small around 10:30, that actually makes the crash worse rather than better.
I wonder, Heather, if you tried, so if you have mostly a carb-based breakfast, I wonder what would happen if you had a protein and fat-based breakfast, like eggs or peanut butter or meat of some sort. Maybe if you want to write in again and let me know if you've tried that before, because I find if I had like a bagel for breakfast, I would absolutely have that crash. Not that a bagel is bad. Sometimes I just want a bagel, but when that crash happens, I say, it's because I had a bagel, and at least I'm not suffering from it. I know what to do about it.
Yeah, and I mentioned that last time. I think I was going through the same thing for a long time, where that was my kind of main breakfast because I didn't like eggs, and so when I started introducing peanut butter or sometimes even Canadian bacon or whatever chicken, we talked about breakfast foods not needing to be breakfast. Those were helpful things.
Oh, and Heather wrote in and said she hasn't tried that, so maybe that might be a good thing to try, or combining. Like you just said, Bob, the peanut butter, if you threw the peanut butter on the bagel,
Right.
Believe it or not, that actually brings your blood sugars down because the protein and the fat in the peanut butter are hard to digest.
Yeah. Now this is kind of maybe a good time for this next comment. When's a good time, or should I even drink protein shakes? And and I know that Ashley, you've made some shakes before. Are you still doing that?
Yeah. So let me hop back for 1 second, because I will say my favorite breakfast is Greek yogurt, peanut butter, and banana across the board. Like I could eat that I have eaten that until quarantine. I couldn't really get bananas and yogurt. That's my go-to. So I get protein, fat, carbs. To me, it's like the perfect meal for me.
Does that hold you, Ashley? Does that hold you for a while?
Oh yeah, I will be full for hours. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm really hungry. So I'm like really good. Then I'm like, oh, I need to eat again. It's like 2:00. Of course, if I broke it up and ate it like over the hour instead of housing it in 15 minutes, maybe that would make a difference too. But that's an Ashley issue. I do love my protein shakes. I don't have them, so I have less in the winter and more of a like omelets, egg, Greek, the yogurt dish person for in the wintertime. But come spring, summer, and warmer weather, I'm all about different protein shakes. I love them. I used to do a lot of green smoothies. I've been doing protein shakes now because I'm not eating seafood anymore. I've been a vegetarian since like 2011. And I just have been I lost my taste for seafood, so I've not been eating it. I was going to say tuna melt was my other favorite meal, but I'm not eating the tuna. For me, I'm having a hard time with it right now. And if I were to eat like a can of tuna, it would be on days where like on a Tuesday where I ride them, I walk the dog, I ride, and then I work out. So there's a lot of activity that needs to reboost for that protein level. So for me, a tuna melt or a protein shake on days like that is really key. I love them. I think it's tricky to find the right protein powder. There's so many options out there. There's so many like multi-level marketing schemes that are like, oh, a protein supplement, but you're like, well, I'm not sure how you make this. And then there's like the vegan kind, the pea kind, the chicken produce kind. Like there's so many kinds of protein. I think people and I have a hard time with that too. I tend to go for the pea protein just because some of the vegan athletes that I follow like that stuff. I don't think it tastes great, but peanut butter makes everything taste better.
Yeah. Well, we've always told people, there's two things here. I mean, first of all is, to answer the question of, when should I drink protein shakes? I mean, for me, I always say, well, again, you're looking at your kind of total picture of macronutrients, and do you even need it? Right. So that's the first question I always ask people is, well, let's take a look at the profile and let's see if you even need a protein shake to supplement your diet. So if you're finding that it's difficult to get in the calories or the protein that you should be getting in for what your goals are, well, then that may be the time. And then it's the question of, well, when do you need it? If you're not eating, those calories in the morning that you need, if you're not much of a breakfast eater, that would be a good time for it. I've told people, but it all depends on someone's schedule. In terms of the what kind, I think that's some kind of a higher level question, and I think that's something that you probably would address with someone like Julie, to get kind of the right thing that worked for your body.
Ashley, do you have a brand that you like?
I'm trying to think what I'm eating right now. I have, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called right now. It's like raw. Come back to me. I'll look it up. But I do vacillate between I've had like the Vega nutrition ones because Brendan Brazier is a vegan Ironman competitor or former Ironman competitor. So I trust his products. I want to say it's raw, like organic garden, something. I will look it up.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. Julie, we've had good success with Optimum Nutrition.
Okay.
That's been one that we've recommended quite a bit. They have a product, Oats and Whey, which we like a lot. But yeah, there's a lot kind of out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, so I think the simpler the better, because really, and to Bob's point, first of all, do you need it? Some people just think we need exorbitant amounts of protein, and I've definitely heard stories of people putting themselves into kidney failure because they overdid the protein supplements, not the food-based protein. So there's that. I always try to tell people to not have more than maybe 30 grams of protein in a sitting of a protein shake or bar. I would never have like 100 grams of protein all at once, because your kidneys have to process protein, and that's very stressful for them. But if you do think you need the protein, if you say, I'm just not eating a lot during the day, and right after a workout, Bob, I'm assuming that's kind of when you tell people to have a protein shake within an hour.
I mean, that would probably be more of an ideal time for sure.
Okay.
But that's, ironically, we talked before about the carbs and all. That would be the time that I'm telling people to get their carbs in as well.
True.
So if you're going to eat that starchy carbohydrate, that would be the time for it. So one of the things that we coach is, you don't have to give up on the bread or the pasta or whatever, but you just need to know when is acceptable to eat it for your body. So when your body's, on fire from that workout and it's going to burn through that starch right away, that would be the best time. I always tell them it's, you use the match test, right? If you can hold a match over something, if you hold a match over bread, boom, it's going to go up in flames pretty quick. So if your body's on fire, it's going to burn through that the same way. But if you hold that match over a piece of steak, well, it's going to take a lot longer to burn that, to burn through that. So your body will longer process that and fuel yourself a lot longer on that protein. But that's the exact reason why you would have the carbohydrate after your workout, is because your body's going to use that up right away.
Yeah, and plus your muscle glycogen is used up after your workout, and that's exactly what you want to store up again, all the glucose that goes into your muscles.
Exactly. So yeah, in terms, I had the question up there about how much protein. I mean, we often tell people, really probably no more than a gram per body weight.
Oh, awesome! I'm so glad to hear that from a trainer.
Yeah. And that's even pushing it, right? I mean, I forget what the RDA recommends. It's far less than that. It's what, a half or even less than that.
Yeah, so I do a gram per kilogram body weight for a person that's not doing excessive, like a ton of exercise. And if you're doing a ton of exercise, I say, what would that be for a pound? So I probably recommend half of what you recommend.
Right. Well, and that's why I said, like, for someone, really kind of building muscle, and that's why I said, yeah. So I think recommended's about, usual recommended's about a half. 2.2, right? So yeah, that'd be about a half. But and then usually you're telling people exercising maybe about 3/4, 0.75 grams per pound. But that's why I say, like, you can go as high as a gram per pound. And that's, definitely that's a high end.
That's perfect. Yep. I just did the math, and I would probably recommend, I usually recommend 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram body weight. And it looks like that's a little bit lower, but I think what you recommend is not dangerous for the average person. Anything can be done dangerously. And the other thing is timing. You don't want to have all of that protein in one sitting. I had someone recently who was having a protein shake and a really high protein bar all at once. It was actually an adolescent. And I said, that's probably not smart, because your kidneys are just, they're getting overwhelmed all at once. So he decided to split it up, and I thought that was perfect.
And I think the other thing that people can work with, maybe it's, if you're stressing about how much protein to eat, on Wednesdays, I don't do that much. Like, I walk the dog, but I don't ride because I have other meetings going on. I don't work out. So I need less calories and less protein or less nutrition less food overall. So I think you can do, what is it called, carb loading or carb recycling, whatever that term is.
Yeah, so that's another.
Like on
another
days
tactic.
you're super active, you eat more. On days you're not as active, you eat less. You don't need as much. And I think that's where if you're eating 3,000 calories on a really busy day, I know we're not talking about calories as a thing, but like for an example, if you're eating 3,000 calories on a really busy day, and then there's a day where you're binging Netflix all day, maybe you have like half that because you don't need it to be hanging out on the couch. And I think that's where people get confused, where you eat. I remember a couple of years ago, I was lifting pretty heavy and I was eating a ton. I was really upping my protein. And I think I actually gained weight because I only lifted heavy like twice a week. And I ate too much protein the rest of the time, too much food the rest of the time. And I did gain weight, and it took me a little bit longer to get rid of that because I couldn't figure out what the pattern was. I will bump in the protein powder I have currently is called Garden of Life.
Oh, yep,
it's raw protein. Yeah. And I mentioned a while back, I'm a big fan of like the vegan or vegetarian sausages, and I just found a better version that's not all soy based. It's actually an eggplant and fennel, and it's 25 grams of protein per little sausage link. So I cook that up with some kale and throw that in a big salad, and that for me is like perfect. So
what's the brand?
I have to run downstairs. I
want to recommend it.
I'll post it on the Facebook page after this. Perfect. But I'm bad at my labels. It's in a blue package. I know that.
Yeah, actually, the cycling is actually another kind of advanced concept that we've talked to some clients about. Well, and it's interesting too because it takes a lot of discipline for sure. To be able to recognize, your busy days, your not so busy days. And we've talked about this because it is somewhat reliant on the idea of, how many calories you're taking in. So when we talked last week about the idea that, we want to stay away from that as much as possible is getting people too overwhelmed with the idea of numbers. But as an advanced concept for people that are comfortable and have had success with their diet in other areas, that's a time when I would talk to somebody about something like that. Certainly for someone who's just starting out, or struggling with weight loss or struggling with nutrition in general. Yeah, that's why I say an advanced concept, because we want to move people away from numbers. So this is what I need. I need help with my nutrition. I say, okay, don't worry. And they've heard of cycling, they've heard of intermittent fasting, they've heard of keto, and they want to try all of those. Sometimes I say, well, let's just get some basic concepts down, and then we can explore these different options.
I love that advice. Yeah, that's great.
I would also add to that like what Julie's talked about with the mindful eating is that like some days when you're not as active, you just feel like you are hungry. There was a day last week, it might have been Monday, and there was it's a Memorial Day. I wasn't super active. I didn't do a lot, but there was a lot going on in the news. There's a lot of really heartbreaking things happening in the country right now. And I just wanted to eat. I wanted like my grilled cheese. I wanted some soup. I wanted some cookies. And I just felt like I was trying to fill that emotional tank because I couldn't quite process what was happening in the news, and I couldn't quite pull myself away from my screens to say, all right, let's figure out what's going on here. And I just was like, I'm hungry all day. And I let myself have that day because I was like, there's a lot going on and I just need this right now. I need something distracting, and cooking is a distraction for me. So I was roasting vegetables like for hours. Helen, my dog, was like, can I just eat some of those? Stop cooking them, feed me. But I knew that day was the day where I was like, all right, food is filling my emotional tank right now, and that's okay. Tomorrow we'll figure out a better way of doing that. And I think that's also important too, that, listening to what your body is saying and needing, and then translating that and kind of tuning into yourself in this time.
Yeah, right. I think that's so important. I think too, normal eating involves some overeating or emotional eating sometimes. We just don't want that to lead to the all or nothing or black and white thinking approach where you say, I already screwed up today, I might as well just binge eat the whole rest of the week. You just say, yeah, I ate a lot of food yesterday, and just move on. It's not a big deal. You needed it, not a big deal. And that should not ever make us gain weight. That is a normal part of life. There's also days when we probably are busy and maybe undereat a little bit, that should not make us lose weight. Our body really wants homeostasis. It wants to stay the same. It's when an issue becomes chronic, when you have so much stress and you're mindlessly overeating on a daily basis. Obviously, it's going to impact your body, right?
I want to remind people, I just had kind of flashed it up there, but we are live, so please send your questions in, and we will try to get them answered in the time that we have left. I do have another question that I wanted to get to today, and it gets into kind of some mindful eating, but it's, how do I break my sugar addiction? And Julie, I'm going to give this to you in just a second, but my take on this is, first, what's kind of causing the addiction? We talked a lot about this last time in terms of, one kind of way I would say is why are you turning to that sugar, or is there something either missing in the diet or something else you can be doing, right? We said the thing before the thing last time, which is the concept of that was, all right, if I feel so drawn to this bag of cookies, well, maybe I can put a little note on the cookies that reminds me, step back, do something else real quick, have a glass of water, do something else that is achievable, doable, and we'll take your mind off the cookies for a minute. And then let's see if we still really want that. And then if so, maybe kind of back off a little bit. So if I am prone to eat, a bag of cookies, well, maybe have 2 and see if that does it for me, and then repeat the process. But that would be one kind of quick example of it. But this question, I'm assuming, probably comes from a much bigger issue. What's your take?
This is a huge question, right? I could probably talk for 3 hours about this, so I'll just try to keep it really short. So I don't even know where to start. So I come upon this a lot, and if you have an addiction, let's say to opiates or something, your body develops this need for those opiates, and you can't just stop cold turkey, right? And with sugar, some people treat it like that, and some people find they have to cut sugar out of their diet. Overeaters Anonymous used to have this diet, and some people still do it, where they cut out all sugar and white carbs, and they find if they don't practice complete abstinence from them, they can never have that food, just like they couldn't do heroin just once, right? And some people feel like that's the case. I tend to not like that approach with food, because we need food. We don't need opiates unless you're addicted, but we need food on a daily basis, and we're faced with carbohydrates on a daily basis, especially socially. You go to a barbecue and they're right in your face. It's like a heroin dealer offering you your drug on a daily basis. It's really, really hard. So I tend to work with people on kind of what you said, Bob, figuring out how to, like, what's going on that's making you want this food. And sugar does definitely give us a high in our brain. There are lab studies. There's one that I heard about years ago. I went to this addiction conference. It was up at UMass years ago. And this scientist got up on the podium, and she talked about a lab rat study or mice or something. And they were given, I think it was cocaine and I think just sugar, like white sugar. And she said both of them on a functional MRI, the same, what they call the pleasure center, lit up in their brain. Right. And she found that both of them developed a resistance to it. So they needed more cocaine or more sugar to get that same amount of pleasure. So sugar does have that effect. But I also find that when we pair carbs with protein and fat, it does lower the high that we get from it. And then that's where some people find things like intermittent fasting and a lower carb diet help them to have less of a high from sugar. So it's a super, super loaded question. And I think if you really feel like you're addicted to sugar, therapy and a dietitian that kind of knows addiction/eating disorders might be a good fit to really dig deeper.
Yeah. And that's just actually a great transition here, because I wanted to address kind of some of the I say differences, but with my certification as a nutrition coach, so to speak, there's a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of habits, developing good habits, typical nutrition questions. But I wanted to kind of address the differences between what I do and what it is that you do, Julie, because I think that something like that, that higher level thing is definitely a bigger question for you to handle. Also, I think one of the other big differences is obviously, we don't handle anybody with diabetes, pregnancy issues. So anybody that's, I say special population, but people that have underlying medical conditions is obviously more of a job for an RD, and a more of a professional approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just because, when you become registered as a dietitian, you have a lot of medical training under your belts, obviously. So yeah.
Right. And
that is specialized too, though. I mean, everybody, there's certified diabetes educators that are much better at diabetes than I am. I know the basics, obviously I need to for my degree, but if you really had some issues, I would definitely say that I would probably just say, here's a name of somebody who's a certified diabetes educator. Just like I've gotten a lot of referrals from other dietitians saying, I don't really do eating disorders. It's just not my field of expertise. Why don't you take this one?
Right. Well, and this is why, as we kind of bring people together here and do this every week, and we've touched on different topics, I think that this is one of the strong things. Ashley, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, the idea of kind of having this network of professionals that we can work within, so that our clients understand that when they come to us that, yeah, we'd like to think we have all the answers, but we don't often. But knowing where to get the right answer, or knowing exactly how to make that transition for someone so that they're getting the right care, and that we know not to overstep our bounds, and to offer, we know not to offer advice that we shouldn't be giving, but because we do have a team of professionals that can help out.
Yeah, I get a lot of people asking me about exercise, and I don't have this. I always refer out. So yeah. Now I have your names, and it's just not my field of expertise. I would feel very underqualified to be giving them workout plans.
Great. Well, I wanted to give anybody that's out there just one more kind of chance to ask a question, because we are just wrapping things up here. I'm kind of scanning through just to see if we had anything else here. Ashley, did you have anything that came in on your end for questions?
I was trying to think. I guess the thing that's come up is the weather is getting warmer, and this kind of goes back to Heather's question a little bit, is that if you're generally feeling like a little like lethargic, or I guess checking in with yourself in terms of like knowing the signs of dehydration versus hunger versus dehydration versus needing to do something different. Like, I guess if we could touch on that really quickly, because we are getting into warmer weather, in terms of proper hydration, and should people consider changing up their with different like summer foods that are more available in this area? I mean, I know we can get most things at the grocery store, but if you're changing up your diet because it's summer barbecue season, are there any tips that you guys have in terms of those two things? Because I'm thinking this because I was at a graduation, socially distant graduation party last night, and one of the attendees was saying, like, I just have been feeling kind of low the last few days, and I'm drinking, think I'm drinking enough water, but nothing that I eat seems to be helping. And obviously, like, I'm not asking this like a medical opinion, but in terms of taking care of the body in seasonal changes. I often tell people to check out the color of their pee. I think because there's certain numbers I give people, but I think they're all kind of relative. We all need different amounts of fluid. But the other thing is, when we have a high protein diet, you need more water to process all that protein. So, if somebody's eating more protein because they're working out more, they might need to up their fluid. Bob, what do you tell people?
Yeah, I think that's pretty a good judge. I mean, people don't like to talk about that. Really like to say, keep things simple and say, 8 glasses of water, but that's where does that come from, and what's that really mean? So yeah, I think the P test is a good one. There's a couple other graphic ones, graphics on it that I've shared with people, and we joke about it, but it's so true. You can learn a lot by how your body feels and what's kind of what it feels like. How
do you guys feel about electrolyte supplements? And I don't mean like, I mean like Gatorade or Pedialyte. I know Gatorade's mostly sugar, but Pedialyte versus like things you add to your water on really hot days. Or
again, I get into. I come back to, you know, I think it's a higher level thing of understanding, you know, do you really need it? I suppose that, you know, I tell people if it makes you feel better and it doesn't interrupt, you know, what else you're doing for nutrition, like you said about Gatorade. I mean, when I'm outside working all day, you know, or if I've gone for a long hike or something like that, like, yeah, I'll suck down a 32-ounce Gatorade. But that, and I know it's a lot of sugar, but again, my body's going to process that pretty quick afterwards. But on a regular basis, I probably don't need it. So you know, but I know that I feel a lot better after I've had it. You know, on days, you know, when you're not feeling great, yeah, Pedialyte. You know, when I've had people that have been sick, you know, and are having trouble keeping up with the electrolytes, then that's a great time for that. So it's again a timing thing. It's a necessity thing as opposed to. And sometimes I think for people, it's hard to recognize when they really need it.
Yeah, same. I pretty much tell people the exact same thing. When you sweat a lot, you absolutely need electrolyte replacement, but you also get electrolytes from the food you eat. So if you're running a marathon, you're obviously not eating food, so you need electrolyte replacement, and you cannot just drink straight water. But if you're having lunch, you should be getting plenty of potassium and sodium in that if you have a big glass of water with it, you should be just fine. Right.
Great. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up here for today. If there are further questions out there, if anybody has joined us late and feels like they didn't get a chance to ask their question today, you're certainly welcome to submit them here. You can post your question. You can send us email. In fact, what I want to do right now is just put up Julie's information so you can reach her directly as well. I didn't make mention of the fact that I had my Bulldog mug today, so I don't know if everybody got a chance to see that. So today was Bulldog Day, and but I thank both of you for joining me today. I think that this information was great, and we'll certainly continue to do these. If people have ideas or for future workshops or future Q&As, please let us know. We'd be happy to address those. And you can join us again Wednesday for our next workshop. Ashley and I are going to finish our conversation about abdominal training and breathing and talk about some of those things as well. But to both of you, thank you for joining me today. And
thank you.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing everybody sometime during the week. All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
Bye.